When I was a teenage lad, one of my favorite types of shows to watch were paranormal investigations. I watched them during the time when streaming wasn't as easily accessible as it is nowadays, so I usually had to wait for Wednesdays when the Sci-Fi Channel would have a marathon of ghost hunters. What I liked about this show in comparison to something like Ghost Adventures is that the two founders of TAPS, the Atlantic Paranormal Society, would try or at least give the illusion that they were approaching things in a scientific way and would constantly try to debunk or give a logical explanation as to what was going on. At least they did that in the earlier seasons. Ghost Adventures never really hooked me like Ghost Hunters did. I gave it another try these past few years, but Zak and his team used various paranormal devices to gather evidence, and it just seems questionable. What probably made me lose interest is when Zak and his boys had a session with Annabelle in the museum. One of the only rules that the guy who was in charge had was not to touch the doll.
Am I allowed to touch her?
No. Oh no. Don't touch her. Do not touch her.
So what does Zak do? He touches the doll because he says that the doll compelled him to.
You need to have it. Why would you do that?
I feel the need to confess that I grabbed the doll's foot.
It was weird. I wasn't expecting it, trust me. There was a weird connection there. She told me to grab her. I think I grabbed her foot on accident.
When?
I don't remember doing it, but then again I do.
Take in mind that the museum doesn't allow paranormal researchers to investigate the doll or to do ghost hunting around her, so Zak had this special privilege and he fucks it up. I'll get back to this point of Zak effing things up for other people later on. When I was scrolling through Amazon Prime a couple of days ago, I saw a movie called Demon House. I assumed it was a horror movie, but upon watching a trailer, I saw that it was a ghost hunting / haunted house type of documentary disguised as a movie. I watched it, and not only is it bland and boring, but it's painfully offensive. I'm not someone that gets offended easily, but Zak goes out of his way to be offensive. Is it because he doesn't have any self-awareness, or is it because his ego is blinding him, or maybe it's both? Who knows? Most of us can agree that at this point Zak Bagans is a fraud. He is a self-proclaimed world's leading investigator, but has no integrity when it comes to investigating ghosts. This film / documentary really digs this point home. What I'm going to be discussing are my main gripes with this documentary and why I think it's problematic. The movie opens up with a warning that claims that this movie is cursed and that demons can attach themselves through electronic devices.
It took me 3 years to finish this film. I had everything I needed. But the truth is, this film is cursed.
That is complete horse manure. If that were the case, I would probably be haunted by 200 demons by just the sheer amount of ghost hunting shows that I've seen. Then we're told how Zak stumbled upon this house. The local news were beginning to report on the Ammons family and dubbed the house Demon House. It gained quite a bit of notoriety on international news, and then Zak swoops down and buys the house, making it gain more attention. Zak tries to present it that right as the Ammons move out, he buys the house. But from the online research I've done, it appears that there was a couple that lived there after the Ammons had moved out, who claimed there was no paranormal activity and were constantly harassed by paranormal thrill seekers. Upon talking to them right as he was buying the house, the wife reaffirmed her stand that there was nothing going on. Then Zak slips the husband some money so they can talk alone. This is when the husband changes his tune, saying he has seen things in the house, but won't tell Zak anything until they sit down and strike up a deal, since what he's offering is peanuts compared to what the movie companies were offering. You see, there's money to be made here. Do you think that the husband is going to be a credible source? Heck no, he's in it for the moolah. For whatever reason, he can't find LaToya Ammons, who was a previous tenant and who had experienced the most paranormal activity. How does he find Latoya? Well, he finds her by using a news report that had nothing to do with demons or possessions or anything like that. The reporter is interviewing her in front of her house where you can see her address. He then manages to find the location and drives over there to try and talk to her. I would have assumed that Zak has a good PR management person that tells him whether what he's doing is a good idea or a bad idea. Well, apparently he doesn't, because any one of them will tell them that violating someone's privacy like he did was a bad idea, and well, he's violating someone's privacy. You don't see this stuff happening on Ghost Adventures because I'm pretty sure that the Travel Channel keeps them on a tight leash, and here in this pseudo documentary, Zak is left to his own demise. Anyways, Latoya doesn't want to talk to him. Zak claims it's because he spent time in the house and she's afraid something has attached itself onto him, but that's bullcrap again. Latoya Ammons had signed an exclusive contract and had sold her story to a movie studio, which prevented her from talking with rivals of the company. If she did talk to Zak, she would break her agreement, and like the other dude said, Zak was probably paying peanuts. In his attempt to capitalize on the story, he bought the house because whoever owns the house also owns the story rights to that house. So Zak couldn't buy Latoya's story, but he could buy the story of the house. The brother that she's living in decides to talk to him. Take in mind that he knows who Zak is. He proceeds to tell him two accounts. The first one of the kids reciting some evil sounding chant. Of course, he doesn't tell us exactly what the chant says. The next one is about the kids fighting each other and their mother, grandmother, and himself trying to separate them. And one of the boys cusses at his grandmother. You know, kids are irrational and impulsive. Sometimes their emotions can get the better of them and they start fighting. Kids chanting and fighting isn't exactly paranormal. Not only that, but this guy can be exaggerating. He knew Zak, so he most likely has seen Ghost Adventures. Then we're shown footage of the grandmother talking about the incident where the kids are in the hospital being checked, and there's a CPS worker with them, and one of the kids starts walking up the wall. Now, sure, this could be seen as something paranormal, but the way they explain it is that the kid is holding onto his grandmother's wrist and she's holding onto his. I feel that if they're holding themselves firmly enough, he could be able to walk up the wall. Zak says he's got the video of this, but he doesn't show it and instead shows a reenactment, making me think that the video probably shows that it wasn't anything paranormal. The only accounts we receive of this, even though it happened in the room with the doctor and nurses in it, are from the grandmother and the CPS worker, who, as we'll see, is really problematic. Upon seeing the boy walking up the wall, the CPS worker just walks out saying she's got another case. How incompetent can you get? The kid needs some sort of help, and instead of you stepping out of the room, you just leave. Later, Zak interviews her where he finds out that she's been affected by this so much that it got her to move out of Indiana. Or at least she says that it was one of the contributing factors of her leaving. But of course, Zak tries to frame it as that was the sole reason that she left the state. She talks about seeing children burned and beaten, but a kid walking up the wall is what traumatized her. I'm not trying to undermine her traumatic experience, but am I crazy seeing that there is some gaps in that logic? We also had testimony from a chief and lieutenant of the police department, and an officer who had gone into the house, and another CPS worker. The chief and the lieutenant were pretty good about just giving the facts that they had witnessed. The chief said that there was a door down in the basement and that every time they looked at it, it would be in a different position. And the lieutenant talked about hearing a voice saying "hey" in his recordings. They also said that they were these blinds that kept leaking this slimy, oily substance. All of these things could easily be explained due to the age of the house and because it was infected with black mold and various other things. There was also this little area under the stairs in the basement where there wasn't concrete and it was just dirt. And once they started digging in, they discovered various things.
We were digging whatever. He had dug about 4 feet.
The officer?
Right. And he found a nail, a fingernail, a clip-on nail. I think it was pink in color.
A nail.
Right. A fingernail, a clip-on nail. And he found some panties.
Panties?
Women's panties, women's underwear.
Also dug up that day, a comb, 2 children's socks, a heavy bar, and a red tin. So who buried these objects under the stairs? And why?
These things could have easily been digged in there by the kids if they had been playing down in the basement. For whatever reason, it's the police officer who to me seems the most unreliable and the one who seems to be exaggerating a lot. He gives this story where he gets in his car after being in the house and his radio starts switching frequencies and he hears a voice saying, "Who there?" or something like that. He's the one who's very insistent that there's something going on and will constantly refer to the house as a demon house or a portal to hell. Zak is also approached by a woman who had previously lived in the house as a teenager. Zak and the lady and her 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, walked around the house and talk. The kids are talking about how it would be cool to do the ghost hunting thing, and Zak tells them that it's scary in real life compared to watching it on TV because things have gotten attached to him. Later, the boy expresses fear of something attaching itself to their mother. Zak sounds genuinely surprised that the boy is seriously worried about it, because Zak is trying to make it seem as if though the boy can sense something, but he just literally got done telling him that things can attach to people, so of course the kid would be scared for his mother. Zak then points the camera at the boy who's about to get into his car and asks what's wrong with him.
I don't know what's wrong with this boy.
There's nothing wrong with him. You just scared him, and he's probably wondering if having gone there will mess up with their lives.
On February 20th, 2014, just 2 days after visiting us at my house, Mika's daughter attempted suicide by overdosing on medication and stabbing herself.
Zak gets a call saying one of the girls threatened to kill her mother, then attempted suicide. Of course, Zak jumps up and claims it's the demons and organizes an exorcism with the priest who had been involved with the Ammons beforehand. The cousin of the girl says that the girl had stab marks on her wrist from stabbing herself with a pen. Then Zak hits us with this bit of information.
Holes in her wrist, her eyes were like red. And
how did she have holes in both her wrists?
In both her wrists, it's like little cuts, like she had stabbed her wrist.
With a pen?
And my sister's the RN.
Both the sides?
Yes.
Okay.
My sister's
like
the
your
RN.
Jesus would have been crucified.
Yes.
I have no idea what Zak was trying to say with this. It makes me sick just thinking of him taking advantage of a girl's suicide attempt. Teenagers are very emotional. Sometimes if they're not in an environment that promotes sharing their emotions, they're going to keep it inside and it's going to be building up until they lash out, which is what sounds like she did. It doesn't sound paranormal in nature. She's telling her mother that she can't stand her. The mom is there telling Zak that her daughter has never done that sort of thing before. And that's the thing though, teens rebel and they have to start somewhere. Just because she hasn't done it before doesn't mean it's demons. It creates an unhealthy environment for the girl where they take away her responsibility and try to blame the demons for it. Even when they're doing the exorcism, she's doing what the priest is saying.
Look down in pity on this your servant Erica.
The mother also says that the night of her attempted suicide in the hospital, her daughter had a 6 carved on her body. But we never see that, or we're not shown any proof either by video or a hospital chart. Zak and his boys go to the house to do an electromagnetic investigation. They brought along another expert named Barry Taff, who has been involved in other celebrity paranormal cases. The typical ghost adventures type of hijinks occur. Dr. Taft starts feeling sick, and while the cameraman follows him, there's like a black form that appears on the frame. I figured it was the cameraman's hand, but then a video analyst who used to work for NASA says he's sure it's not a hand. So I guess I'm the schmuck. The cameraman begins to act weird and he sneaks down to the basement. Look at those A1 sneaking skills. He legitimately looks like Pink Panther. Probably the part that most people found interesting was when Adam, the cameraman who captured the shadow, started acting violently once they were in the hotel. He claims that the demon goat wants Zak. This is what I don't understand. If the demon goat wants Zak, why doesn't he just possess him or take him or something? He's right there. I don't know what's preventing the demon goat from getting Zak. After that incident, Zak fires him and then shows how Adam's life has changed. He's tattooed the 666 on his hand and has done other creepy stuff. A lot of people were saying that Adam is a drug addict, but if you go to IMDb, you'll see that he's an actor who has appeared in other horror movies. Those tattoos are probably fake, but his Instagram and Twitter are on private, so who's to say they're not fake? They're probably real, and I'm the schmuck. Then he does the lockdown and he barricades himself inside the house. Even though there are 3 cameras recording that area, only the camera that he has dropped and has gone out of focus is the one that records the shadow that came out of the wall and charged at him.
Back the fuck up.
And apparently after seeing that black shadow, he ends up having to wear glasses due to his vision becoming cross-eyed. And I don't know, maybe this was a condition that he developed and he just took advantage of it and claimed it was because of the house. You're probably saying, hey, if it's not paranormal, what is it? Okay, so there was a home inspector that came to inspect the house and he found black mold. The most common black mold symptoms and health effects are associated with respiratory response, chronic coughing and sneezing, irritation to the eyes, mucous membranes of the nose and throat, rashes, chronic fatigue, and persistent headaches. In particular, severe cases of prolonged exposure, black mold health effects can be more dangerous and include nausea, vomiting, and bleeding in the lungs and nose. He said it was only in the attic where he found most of these spores, but they could easily have seeped through the floor or through the chimney. Oh, you don't like that explanation? Well, the kids were actually checked out by a psychologist because they were being investigated by CPS after the school had called the authorities for truancy on part of the kids. And then someone else called the DCS and asked the agency to investigate Ammons. The anonymous caller believed the children were performing for Ammons and she was encouraging their behavior. The clinical psychologist Stacy Wright, who evaluated Ammons' youngest son, said the boy tended to act possessed when he was challenged, redirected, or asked questions he didn't want to answer. In her evaluation, Wright wrote that he seemed coherent and logical except when he talked about demons. It was then that the 8-year-old's stories become bizarre, fragmented, and illogical, Wright said. His story changed each time he told them. He also changed the subject, quizzing Wright on math problems and asking her about outer space. Wright believed the 8-year-old did not suffer from a true psychotic disorder. This appears to be an unfortunate, sad case of a child who had been induced into a delusional system perpetuated by his mother and potentially reinforced by other relatives, she wrote in her psychological evaluation. Psychologist Joel Schwartz, who evaluated Ammons' daughter and older son, came to a similar conclusion. There also appears to be a need to assess the extent to which Ammons' daughter may have been unduly influenced by her mother's concern that the family was exposed to paranormal experiences, Schwartz wrote. From what I've looked into the case, it looks like the Ammons are receiving some sort of psychological help, and I hope that having a psychologist helps them through this. Look, I don't care if Zak claims that there were 200 demons in that home. I don't care that he hired an actor to act possessed. He was obviously trying to make a Blair Witch style documentary, and that's fine. But the issue that I have is that he's doing it at the sake of capitalizing on real people's life. He takes their tragedies and makes it seem as if though there's something more going on, but sometimes things happen to people all the time, and he's trying to make the tragedies fit into his narrative that ghosts and demons are real and that their tragedies are evidence of that because they came in contact with the house. Barry Taff felt sick in the house, and then a month later or something like that, he ends up in the hospital for organ failure. Maybe the symptoms just happened to occur when he was in the house. The second CPS worker has a motorcycle accident, and that's just the risk you take when you're riding a motorcycle. Sometimes you have accidents. And then the home inspector later on almost got hit by lightning, and he developed cancer. Again, we're not giving a time frame for how long it took for the man to develop cancer, but I don't think it was demons. People just develop cancer. It's unfortunate, but that's just how things are. And then Zak even has a medium friend who tried to contact the demons remotely, and then her husband ended up killing her, then committed suicide. And Zak has the audacity to say it was the demon house's influence. He ends up destroying the house and only ends up keeping a staircase for like his museum in Vegas. And the reason why I think he destroyed the house is the same reason why he touched Annabelle, and that's because he wants to be the only one that investigates those things, because then his investigation will go up in price or it will go up in importance, because he was the only one that was able to investigate those things first-handedly. You know, if he really wanted to get to the bottom of this in the supernatural side of things, he would have set up a 24-hour surveillance. He could have done updates in his Ghost Adventures show, but he destroys the house so that no one else investigates it. And I think those were the two reasons that he destroyed the house. He didn't want anyone to investigate it, and he wanted his own investigation to go up in price or in value. Conclusion: the only scary thing about Demon House is Zak Bagans' ego. A lot of people were saying that was the most serious that Zak Bagans has ever been, and that this was like the best thing that he's ever made, and I don't think that's true. At best, he's still this caricature that he's developed over the years. I think that if he wanted to make a good investigation, he would have focused on the aspect of the Demon House of mass hysteria of the kids and the mother's religious fascination. I don't think this is his magnum opus. I feel that as a documentary he failed. I feel like as a sort of a found footage film it fails, and I would rather pick an episode of Ghost Adventures over this. Please share your opinions down below, and if you like this sort of content, be sure to subscribe. Thank you all for watching. Have a good one.